2013 on his way to the top. He became the first fighter in UFC history to hold 2 titles simultaneously, going 9-1 with 7 finishes. But since his return to the sport in 2018, McGregor has gone 1-3 with all 3 losses coming by stoppage. For more, let's head to Las Vegas and Michael Eaves.
All right, Stan, thank you so much. We knew this was going to be a huge night in Las Vegas, and we knew it was going to be one of the best trilogies in UFC history, and now the fans will never forget what happened here at UFC 264. Brett Okamoto and Max Kellerman. Brett, let me start with you. Both guys in the previous fight scored a knockout. Clearly, in the last 2 fights that happened in 6 months, Dustin Poirier was the better fighter.
I think that's the narrative, right? Because this is a fight. This is the way in which the fight ended. You can have competing narratives. I mean, you're going to have one from Conor McGregor. You heard it there, that he was boxing his head off and that the only reason he lost the fight was because he got injured. He was not boxing Dustin Poirier's head off. What I saw is that Dustin actually hurt him with a shot. Yeah. Then he was the one who initiated the clinch. I think that has got to be the narrative, that Dustin Poirier was having his way. He won that fight. It's unfortunate the manner in which it ended, but I got to say, you know, walking out of this arena, hearing the last things that Conor McGregor said, going after the wife, kind of bringing up all of sort of the old tired storylines, and then he's being carted off on a stretcher and he's waving to the crowd. I want to see a more serious Conor McGregor. I want to see him accept for once that he lost this fight.
It was a lucky break, so to speak, because it's a built-in excuse now. And people, even in the arena, McGregor fans can claim that there wasn't a definitive ending, that it's inconclusive. The fact of the matter is he was about to lose the fight. He was clearly going to lose the fight. He was competitive for a little bit. Usually that fade for McGregor happens after minute 8, as everyone's been saying. Today it was after minute 1.5. And people misuse the word dilemma all the time. It's not a tough choice. It's a choice between 2 bad options. McGregor had a dilemma. Do I stand on my feet when he was buzzed, and this is not going my way? Or do I clinch and kind of draw him in, probably wind up on the ground? That's also a bad situation, but maybe at that moment a better one. And then he goes for the guillotine prematurely, I thought, which to me says, I can't win the way I planned on winning. Let me try this. Seemed a little bit desperate to me. If McGregor, if the UFC is interested in McGregor going on long term, I think he needs to be matched up against a smaller striker. When he was on his way up, he had a natural size and height and reach advantage against smaller strikers, and he was dynamic. A Jose Aldo rematch works. Something like that. Because tonight, I saw 2 32-year-olds in the octagon. One was a prime guy on the top of his game, at or near the top of the sport. That was Poirier. The other guy was McGregor, and he wasn't that.
So we know that Dustin Poirier will move on and face Charles Oliveira for the 155-pound title, hopefully later this year, maybe even Madison Square Garden later in the fall. The question now is for Conor McGregor. As we just showed you, he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. All 3 of them were finishes. And quite honestly, the antics that he showed in the ring left a lot of people in the T-Mobile Arena with a sour feeling, even for those who really enjoy Conor McGregor's antics, because it was so classless to go after his wife and use the term that he used to describe Dustin Poirier's wife. So, Brett, let me start with you. Based on everything we saw tonight, where Conor McGregor is in his life and his career, what's next for him?
He needs to make a decision. He needs to make a decision. Does he want to be a full-time fighter? Does he want to get back to what he was in 2015 and 2016? Or does he want to show up once or twice a year, get paid, have a big fight? Because he can still do that. People are still going to tune in to Conor McGregor fights. But what I saw tonight, guys, this is just the reality of what happened when he walked away from the sport in 2016, which none of us blame him for. He left. He went to go fight Floyd Mayweather, make a whole lot of money, but he left the sport. And while he left the sport, he lost ground on all of the men who were still in the sport. And so that's what we're seeing right now. We can dissect this fight as many times as we want, but bottom line was Dustin Poirier was just a more well-rounded martial artist. So does Conor McGregor want to get in the gym? Does he want to try to maximize his potential still, or does he just want to take those big money fights that will still exist for him, but he's not going to be talked about in the same manner as the Khabibs, the Dustins, all of those other guys that are at the top of this division?
Well, no one's going to be talking the same breath as Khabib unless you're talking about, like, you know, Usman or someone like that. But I think that's an important kind of furthering of the story, Brett, that you just did, which is there's been a lot of focus, including by me and many others, about essentially like losing the eye of the tiger because you made $100 million. That's part of it. But the other, you know, it's not enough for us to shake our fist and say, you need to get that edge back. That's, you know, if you don't have the equipment to do it, it doesn't matter how bad you want it. And you're right. in his absence from serious MMA competition, going back already almost half a decade, other guys have progressed, and he is still much more one-dimensional than his rivals, who he was better than on the way up. He needs to round out his game, and the question is, does he want to do it?
And the question is, once the adrenaline leaves and he gets back by himself, considering how this performance went, will he ever fight in the UFC again? Because that is a serious question as well, despite what he may have said and tried to make people believe there in the octagon tonight. But again, what a performance it was by Dustin Poirier, who will now get a second chance to be the lightweight champion in the UFC. For Brett Okamoto and Max Kellerman, I'm Michael Lees. We'll send it back to Stan.
McGregor took the UFC by storm when he debuted in 2013. On his way to the top, he became the first fighter in UFC history to hold 2 titles simultaneously, going 9-1 with 7 finishes. But again, since his return to the sport in 2018, McGregor has gone 1-3 with all 3 losses coming by stoppage. For more, let's head to Vegas and Michael Lees.
Yeah, what a night it was here in Las Vegas. A stunning finish, not because Dustin Poirier won, but because it was a broken leg that ended this fight. The former double champ, Daniel Cormier, joins me now. The last 2 times these 2 guys fought, it was clear that Dustin Poirier was the better fighter. What did you make of how he took control of that first round and ultimately got the win?
Eves, it was crazy because, as you said, 2 times in a row now, Dustin's proven that he's the better fighter, but that's the time away. While McGregor was away, Poirier was going through his ups and downs. He was continuing to build, held a portion of the title. So all the confidence issues he may have had when he first fought Conor, they were gone. They were a thing of the past. And today, he got hurt by Conor early, couple leg kicks, but once he hit Conor and hurt Conor forced a clinch position. Dustin went for a takedown. Conor jumps guillotine. Dustin Poirier is a black belt and a phenomenal grappler, and he dominated from the top the rest of the first round.
So we know that Dustin Poirier will move on and face Charles Oliveira for the lightweight championship, probably later this year, maybe even Madison Square Garden. But what's next for Conor McGregor? He said some very nasty things in the octagon, including about Dustin Poirier's wife, using a very insulting term. Maybe the thought process was he's trying to set up the idea that they could fight for a 4th time. And Dana White has now said here in Las Vegas that he will give them a 4th fight because he didn't want it to end that way. What do you make of that decision by Dana White, and what should be next for Conor McGregor?
Well, you know, when you think about Conor being the biggest star in the sport in all of fighting, right? Only Canelo rivals him at this point. You can see why the promoter thinks that they should run the 4th one. And it was almost like it was the best possible way to lose, because there are still questions out there, because would Conor have come out in the 2nd round and done better? Listen, Dustin Poirier is a better fighter today than he was when they fought initially. He's a better fighter than Conor McGregor today than Conor is today. But if they want to run it back, they had in there tonight without Conor McGregor. So I can see why. But if for me, I think it takes a step back. Go and fight somebody that's not the best. A lot's being made of Conor winning 1 fight since he was the champion. Well, he's lost 3 out of 4, but it's been to Habib and then to Dustin Poirier twice.
So again, the question will be, when will we see Conor McGregor again? A broken leg could be a year before we see him in the cage again. But again, we got to get some props to Dustin Poirier. 20 wins now in the UFC, 3rd fastest to do it. Only 2 guys did it faster, John Jones and George St. Pierre. For Daniel Cormier, I'm Michael Leaves. Let's send